we're really honored to have Blake Oshiro here, a former colleague, someone who I know very well because he was my debating partner. But before I introduce him, I want to draw your attention very briefly to the newsletter. This is the way we communicate with you. If you're not in the district, I want to introduce my office manager. She's the one, in fact, this is constituent services also. If you've got any difficulties, make sure you touch base, or let's say you complain to her and then you commend with me. But Jillian Anderson is the office manager, and she's the one who puts a lot of this together, so give her a round of applause. Thank you, Jillian, for all you do. In fact, you're going to announce who, after Blake Oshiro is here, who's the next month and the next month. Judge Foley, who did the standards of conduct for the legislature. Consul General of South Korea, following that. And by the way, we have on standby Maya Satoru Un, who spoke a number of years ago here, and she's been traveling all over the world. President Obama's sister, who loves the name of this place, the Beer Summit. That's good. We also have a special announcement. When I see the right cue and the right person, I will make the announcement. But let's go very briefly. How many of you guys drive on Little Home Road? Come on, all of you guys do. How many of you don't stop when somebody's in the crosswalk at Kamakani Street? 70% of you are supposed to raise your hands because that's what the data says. We are the worst in this, well, no, only on Oahu, in terms of yielding to those on Kamakani. It's really one of the faster strips on Little Home Road, so people don't slow down. But hey guys, we can do better. We don't want to lead the group, but 71% is a little bit high. And that was one of the town hall meetings that we had a few weeks ago. And they promised to put rumble strips, speed bumps in certain areas, particularly where the school kids are, on the Camilo Iki School on Hawaii Kai Drive. Before, when Blake and I were in the legislature, it was an arm and a leg to get a speed bump in your district. Now they're realizing that that's a problem. Now we have a special announcement. I want to call on Lisa Bishop, who is the president of Friends of Hanauma Bay. All of you know Hanauma Bay. Give her a welcome, please, Lisa Bishop. Lisa has a special announcement.
Thank you, Gene. Friends of Hanauma Bay every year awards a scholarship to members of the Kaiser High School Wipeout. And this year, I'd like to share with you that Kaya Ketterer is our winner. She earned a $5,000 scholarship.
Kaya, that's a bigger tip than you're going to get from us tonight.
There you go. So
$5,000.
I just wanted to let you guys know that our scholarships are community funded by donations, and here is one of the great recipients, and everybody's donations are going to help sponsor the college. So thank you, Kaya, and congratulations.
Yay, Kaya. Thank you, Lisa, for your generosity. We know, how much does it cost to get in Hanauma Bay nowadays?
Nothing for residents.
Okay, but if you're not a resident, how much?
$25 are well deserved.
25 and growing?
I'm sorry?
Is it growing? Is it going to go up? It's a model that the governor's, well, I'll leave it to Blake. You guys are a model for the new pay-as-you-go tourism, the management tourism. So you are a model for doing that.
Does that money go back to Hanauma Bay?
It's supposed to stay, and we're only at Hanauma Bay, and we're working with the city to make sure that that happens.
Good question. That's one of the lawyer's questions that has been a bit of a question. Okay, the last thing is, guys, Hawaii Kai as we know it is not going to be the same if 3 areas don't get renewed in their lease. Bishop Estate, as you know, owned all of our land in the beginning. Lease to fee conversion came about. All of us probably own, except now there's a huge farming, 80 acres in the back where the Camilo Nui farmers in about 14 to 16 months have no lease renegotiations. 80 acres made into a subdivision is going to really change the complexity of our Hawaii Kai. The second one is James. James is probably maybe 3 or 4 years out, and their lease negotiations are non-existent. The one that I didn't put in this article, which I hope you guys will read, is the Oahu Club. They are owned by the Japanese. They didn't want to make a big issue, but if the Oahu Club goes out, some of the good health exercise places in our community is gone. So inside here is a survey. We want to know what you think about the future of Hawaii Kai, what it should be like. Bishop Estate, I said, would be interested to know about. They said, please share with us all the community's insights as to what you want to do with those future parcels, because they're very big. The last thing I want to say before I introduce Blake is, we all know the Maui tragedy. We all know that an ember can become a blowtorch at 70 miles an hour. Many of you, now, okay, generically speaking about my district, people are saying, you know, behind my house there's an area that is is Kamehameha schools, and do you know that if the fire came there, my house would be gone, and then my neighbor's house, and then so on. The way Lahaina in 17 minutes is gone. $6 billion of real estate. So we, Peck Jillian, are we doing the survey? Is the survey out now? It went out yesterday. Did any of you get the survey about the future? I mean, the hazards in your. We're doing an inventory of all the fire hazards in the district, so we know to report to the authorities what needs to be done, what particular things, particularly like in front of the post office or in front of Kamiluiki School, where all the cocoa crater stuff, etc. We're just having a new filter and lens to see our environment, particularly after Maui. Peter.
Gene, how do we, I live on the Hawaii Kai golf course, and it's brown, and a match will torch that whole thing. But it's a water issue. So how do we, I mean, that's part of the inventory, but how do we...
You mean a water, like put out the fire, like have water?
No,
like in Maui?
make the grass green and
okay.
not so flammable.
I don't think we're going to probably be able to provide water, except so much as the maintenance to get it cut down to where if it did burn, it would be a sparkler rather than a flamethrower kind of thing. Edward.
2010, we had an Asian fire. Was there investigation? Is there a report resulting from that? We can use today?
Jog our memory, the 2010 fire was where?
Palama Valley.
Up to Kamihami Ridge. Came up the mountain. Yeah, they had to evacuate Kamihami Ridge.
Okay, I mean, we had one in Haione Valley. It kind of came and went within a matter of 6 hours. Is the Kamihami one? Okay. Yes, she's right behind you as it goes. Okay, shifting leadership forum, opening up now the beer summit. We have the best and the brightest, if you will, who is a former colleague from the legislature. He's a graduate of the Richardson School of Law, and he hangs around places. I just got off a plane from Boston a number of hours ago. He's a graduate of the Kennedy School of Harvard Kennedy School of Executive Management, which makes him a good manager and a good debater because he's a lawyer. As I said earlier, he was my debating partner, and we had a radio show on KHVH. We'd throw like a hockey puck in the middle on an issue, and we would go back and forth. We've learned great respect for each other, and particularly his legacy in the legislature. There's two things that resounds very, very proudly for Blake. Number one is, whenever there was a debate on the floor, his first and his default response was, if you would read the bill.
Yeah.
If you would, in other words, if you read the bill, you'd agree with me. That's what he was saying. But he said, now read the bill and you really can hone it. The second thing was, you remember our one-term governor? He, when he started out, was in deep kimchi with the legislature. Blake Oshiro was in the legislature as the majority leader at the time, and Governor Abercrombie tapped him to become the liaison between the governor's office and the legislature. And Blake, genuinely speaking, you turned from a D minus grade for Abercrombie into a C plus, almost a B, and we know what happened after the EGA situation happened. But he turned that around because he knows when he's talking about something, he's convincing, and tonight we're going to hear probably as much as you want to know about the emergency housing proclamation, talk about Maui, and then he says he's got a small presentation, and mostly he's going to hear your question and answers. So without further ado, let's welcome Blake Oshiro, the governor's senior advisor.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to come and talk story with you guys. I have a very short presentation, like extremely short. So I've been working for Governor Green now since January, and I was in the private sector for a while, but we served together in the House, and the governor won and said, Blake, can you please come back? Help me out, let's work on some public policy. So I became his senior advisor. My main duties are to work on all of his public policy, his bills, his budget, and trying to make sure that whatever he's doing is moving forward on his agenda, and trying to really make a lot of the hard decisions that unfortunately we feel were not being made in sort of the past few years. So he wants to try and really jumpstart and move things along so that we don't have these perennial issues. Of course, a lot of his decisions and his actions are being somewhat controversial. Before the Maui fire, he was getting a lot of heated criticism over the emergency proclamation on affordable housing. We also did one on homelessness because that continues to be a very pervasive issue. And we are doing some really interesting things when it comes to the governor's passion, which is healthcare. But of course, all of that has sort of taken a little bit of a sidestep for the time being. For the last few weeks, that we've been dealing with Maui. That's been our entire focus for the last 3 weeks. We're luckily at this point a little bit out of the crisis mode, so we can now move into a little bit more of a planning, recovery stage. Still a lot of work to be done, a lot of really hard decisions to be made, but the governor is working on it tirelessly. As an ER doc, I think he was kind of built for a lot of these decisions. It's all about triage in that first 2 to 3 weeks. It's like things are always happening and decisions are flying at him all the time, and he just kind of kept up with it. So now that we're out of that phase, I think we're now into a little bit more of what does the future of Lahaina look like, what is Maui going to look like, and how is that really going to be affecting the state in the long term. So that's kind of a general overview of where things are at in the governor's office. But if I can answer any of your folks' questions, happy to help, give you, I guess, whatever I'm thinking. I will tell you, when it comes to Hawaii Kai, right, I'm out in Kahalu, so I'm a little bit farther away. So if it's a community issue, I may not be the most attuned to it, but I'm happy to take it back to my office and take it back to my constituent services folks, and we can try to see if we can be helpful for whatever is happening and going on in the community.
So, he's really a man of his word. He says he's going to read really brief. This is probably one of the briefest introductions that we've had. Okay, questions. It says it's open for any of the things that's coming out of the governor's office. Edward.
I wrote it down. I'll try it. But just since you graduated with a law degree, you're always good in HRS. The time period for a rental contract is regulated by the state in HRS 520 as any period. Since 1980, state law HRS 46, the enabling act, has prohibited phasing out residential use like renting. Would the governor be willing to affirm this in his emergency proclamation by suspending all restrictions on owner-occupied residential rental. What is the process for to get consideration of a provision in an emergency proclamation?
So, answering your question about the process, and then maybe other more specific, we can get into that about what you're trying to do. But for the emergency, any emergency proclamation that the governor issues is generally only good for 60 days. Under the emergency powers that the governor is given, he can continue to renew that, but they only are good for 60 days. It'll say so in any emergency proclamation what the duration is. So those are set for the 60 days. But during that time, what happens is people bring up new issues and things that they like to see amended. And so they bring it to our attention. We talk it over with the Attorney General and also any affected department. And if we think that that is a valid issue to be included in the next round, then we drop the language and then we'll do that in the next round for the emergency proclamation, which I think is coming up relatively soon for affordable housing, since the last one was issued in July sometime. So yeah. So it would be coming up soon. So if there is something we can talk about, or we can email over, and I can figure out if that's something to put into the emergency proclamation, because it does sound like it's addressing a statutory change, which obviously, as you know, would either have to be a bill through the legislature, or we would do it through the emergency proc for those shortened amount of periods.
Okay, so is there a similar process with the board that meets on housing? Is there public testimony? Is there a similar process or a legislative process to have the board consider changes to proclamation or policy in general for affordable housing emergency?
So the working group that is formed under the emergency proclamation is really tasked with the idea of looking at projects and how to move and expedite them. The emergency proc itself, that process is a little bit outside of the scope of the working group. So I would recommend that you or whoever organization or whatever, there's conversations happen, we would talk with the AG, and then it would be brought to the governor's attention.
Okay, so are you the best contact to start that conversation?
Yeah, I'm happy to come to have that initial discussion, and then we can bring in the AG and see where they're at in terms of refining.
Perfect.
Good description. Best contact in the governor's office. Okay, Q&A. We're already in. Who's next? Otherwise, I'm going to go. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Got a couple over here.
Yeah.
My question is, they're temporarily housed in hotels and whatever, but that money from FEMA is, two things, might run out, and two, people may get kind of claustrophobic staying in the hotels. There's literally hundreds of them. And what's going to happen? Are they going to be relocating to off island? Are we waiting to house people doing the jobs on this island or this island? Because it's going to be 3 or 4 years before they actually go home.
Yeah.
So we anticipate, I anticipate there's going to be, many people in houseless in a different way. So is there any provision that's going to be there for people to even fly to the other islands and find shelter here?
Yeah, that's a good question. So generally, there's about 11,000 Lahaina residents that no longer can live in Lahaina. So at this point, a lot of them were able to find accommodations in family or friends, but there was about 1,500 that were placed in vacation rentals, about 4,000 that were in hotels. All of those stays currently in hotels and vacation rentals are what we consider very temporary housing, because we don't see that as in any way long-term duration for a lot of them. So we're currently working with FEMA on two different plans. One is we have to see what the existing marketplace will bear when it comes to vacation rentals, long-term rentals, hotels, if people are willing to stay in hotels or timeshares. So we're working to see what that marketplace will bear. Hopefully, we're estimating that might be about 2,000 to 3,000 units that will house people for 18 months. The FEMA program will pay for housing up to 18 months. And then after that 3,000 or so is met, FEMA has indicated a willingness to help us build some transitional housing. Those would be very simple, modular home type, maybe mobile home type, meant to be just a place for a roof over their head, but to give them their own space for 18 months until they get whatever with their insurance or anything else so that they can start their rebuild. So that's sort of the phase 2 that we're working on right now.
But the question I had was, according to legal aid on Maui, 35% of the people are non-citizens.
Yes,
So they're not eligible for FEMA
Correct.
unless their children are born here
correct.
and they're contract workers. So they're the ones falling through the cracks.
Yeah.
So how do you accommodate them?
Yeah, so if they are undocumented, then they will be in a different program. Then those would get paid for by Red Cross. Red Cross has indicated a willingness to find this transitional housing for a lot of the undocumented people that are from Lahaina and suffering. And if not, then we will also have a similar small program in the state. So the state, through their funds, are able to, through Department of Human Services, they're able to do some housing and wraparound services for those undocumented folks. No, I'm sorry. So this gentleman and then
We moved here from Singapore. Regarding Senator Stanley Chang's Singapore model for affordable housing, is there any life left in that initiative?
So there is. So the legislature funded some money to build high-rise affordable housing units. We'd be looking mostly in Kaka'ako and trying to see where else our state agency, Hawaii Housing Finance Development Corps, HHFDC, can find places that are willing to build high-rises. The specific idea that Senator Chang had about placing it all in what is or maybe Aloha Stadium, that was too high density, too many units to put all in one place, and would it not have fit? His idea is still alive, but it's sort of dependent on what the footprint can bear. But we are looking at doing more high-rise affordable housing around Oahu. Yes, I'm sorry. So the two in the back? Yeah. Okay.
Just a follow-up. Are there examples in the United States that y'all find attractive for high-rise, low-income housing that's working well? In America.
Not so it wouldn't be low income. It's meant to be affordable housing. So it's more 140% of the median income for most families. So it's meant to be working class.
If I stand corrected, but is there an example in the United States where this is a role model that other states have wanted to emulate?
There are some. I'm not that familiar with those locations. I think there are some in Seattle that they've looked at, and there were some others in one more location, but I can't seem to find it off the top of my head. But what we're trying to see is we're relying on the developers to actually say what they think is a workable model that they can build. A lot of them will still be mixed use, so there will be some market rate housing mixed in with the affordable units. So it wouldn't all be affordable. Yeah. It is. There are mixed use units or buildings now, I think, in Kaka'ako. So it works sometimes, but it really depends on how they're designed. Um, yes, I'm sorry.
So there was already this homeless and housing issue in Maui and West Maui, lack of homes there. And it seemed like when it gets to the point where construction begins, which is a long way off, but you're going to see temporary construction, working housing. So like a modular type of that type. I don't know if this is a discussion, but it would seem like you could basic modular type of stuff that would, for the time being during construction phase, could house construction workers, and then ultimately be, after they're done, be something that could help with the homelessness. So I don't know if that's being discussed or not, but seems like it'd be logical. I know there's a lot of debate on development and all that, but it just seems like that would make sense. My other question, well, comment on that, and I got one more quick question.
Sure. Yeah. So actually, that idea is actually very much in alignment with where I think the governor's at. We are looking at when it came to this idea of modular homes or easy to build, put together. I think the number I heard was we got 60 different vendors come forward and say we all have a great idea and ours is cheap and fast and easy to build. And so right now they're working on trying to see how they cull that number from 60 down to a more workable number. Then it's a question of how much will FEMA pay for, how much is the state going to pay for, and all of that is still up in the air but being discussed. And then it's like you said, once we're done with those things, the 18 months or 24 months, the governor's idea is he would like to convert a lot of those into some sort of housing for houseless
But
folks.
you're talking about the temporary for the displaced homeowners now, but also temporary construction workers are going to
Yes.
they're not going to commute.
Yeah. So
And
we
what about the land? Like, would that be on state land, maybe on school's land? Is there land that's not, it wasn't developed? Is that already designated, or that has to be decided on?
that still has to be figured out where that is, because especially it's where the infrastructure will be. Will guide a lot of those decisions on where those type of housing units would pop up.
Only my other question, we talked about just the risk of now everybody's worried about the grass and the fires. There was a July 2021 report that Maui County had presented to them or solicited on the risk of wildfires. So basically pointed all the risk out. This was July 2021. I don't know how the government works and who's responsible for that, but it seems like they basically just were handed, here's what's going to happen, and nothing was done. So I don't know how that going forward. I don't know if other reports have been done for Honolulu County, but it basically said we've got the funds for it, and this grass is growing in these previous pineapple cherry fields are on liability, and this is what's going to happen. It's a report from July 2021 that nothing was done on. So I don't know how we come in reports and information that we have that not get implemented.
Yeah, I mean, I would. Is this being recorded? I don't know how frank I should be, but my general assessment.
Do you know that report? You know what I'm referring to?
Yeah, I did. I didn't read it, but I think I know what thing they're talking about. I can tell you a couple of things, right? Overall, having been in government for 20 years now, it's a very reactionary system that we have, right? A crisis pops up, an issue pops up, and then government decides they need to act. And so it's unfortunate when things like this, like a wildfire happens, but it definitely will spur action going forward. It will spur funding that may have been requested before, but was never actually funded. And so I think it's things like this that remind us how much more we need to invest in prevention. So I do think the legislature has already set up a working group in the House. So they will be looking at what they need to do for prevention on wildfires specifically. And we have actually asked our Department of Land and Natural Resources, who has a lot of the forestry lands that are adjacent or considered part of these areas, to start looking at how we do a better job at managing these lands that sometimes go fallow. So I'm sorry. So back and then forward. Yeah. Yes.
I have two questions. One is the state gonna exercise eminent domain on private land in Lahaina?
Probably not. I mean, there might be specific small parcels that might be necessary for a specific use, but I can't imagine that it's going to be done with any large effort, right? Like, let's say they need to condemn some land because there's some new, I don't know, water facility they want to build, or a different sewage treatment plant, or something like that. I can see that being possible, but I can't see it being a broad overall need to condemn a lot of land in
Could I
Lahaina.
follow up with that? Because there's a lot of internet conspiracy theories that somebody's going to come in and take it away, and it's going to be like everybody's going to be out in the government, and smart cities are going to take over. And there was a beam of microwave that came down and just, I mean, a lot of this stuff is still going around, and I hope you can kind of debunk some of these things that,
Yeah.
particularly about, government was going to come in and like take over the whole of the lot. And
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to what Lahaina is going to look like in the future, the governor has made clear, I mean, he's going to be around for the next 3 years. He wins again, it's another 4. He's made very clear he's going to take his guide from Maui and the people of Lahaina, what they want to see for their future of their lands and their community. We're not going to be imposing any idea of what it should be. I don't know if that helps.
I would add that the Restoration Society, or whatever the name is, because Lahaina is a historic town, all of the precise drawings, photographs of recreating Lahaina as it is now can be done easily, because all the stuff is already architecturally stored. So my sense is the probability that they're going to restore the old Lahaina the way it is would make it new and fresh, and the way it looked a few weeks ago is going to look the way it will be in the future. And that is very, very doable.
So my second question is, I guess Maui has developed that smart city or something like that. The plan has been in progress. Well, what if at this stage now the community changed their mind and they don't want that and they stop it?
Yeah, I mean, I think they can. It's entirely a county decision. I don't think that's a state.
What's a smart city anyway? Everybody know what a smart city is? What's a smart city?
Yeah. A smart city. I mean, at least as I understand it, right? It's built to be more highly technologically accessible. So you have 5G. You have a lot of the street lights, cameras, everything working all in conjunction so that traffic flows smoother. You're watching out for pedestrians and crime. Everybody has access to high-speed Wi-Fi. That's what I understand.
Everything but a social credit system,
Yeah.
even though it's bumping up.
Yeah. And even some of them envision that's where you have a lot of autonomous driving. You don't have people in their cars. You have driverless vehicles. That's the vision, anyways. I understand it. But I don't know that that's. I mean, that's an entirely county decision that they would drive, because that's where the investment comes from, is through the county's funds. Yeah.
2 questions.
Yeah.
From the time, right now, all the way clean up on Maui, everything, build a house, 4 months or so, what's the timeline? How many years?
Oh.
Did everybody hear the question?
Yeah.
How many-
What's the
estimate?
timeline on where things will be in the future of recovery for Lahaina? So we're out of the crisis stage where they finally are, I think, almost done with some of the hazardous material removal that EPA is doing in the burned areas, right? So taking out whatever would be harmful to people or we don't want washing out into the ocean. Once that's done, they'll give a short period of time for residents and businesses to go back to their properties have complete access, do whatever you need to do back in your property. And then it's debris cleanup. Debris cleanup basically means bulldozers come and they just level the ground, right? Everything that's there then gets shipped off somewhere and thrown away somewhere. I don't know. That's somebody else to figure that out. That's not me. Then once the land is cleared, right, then the next step is put in infrastructure, right? Put in back the water, the sewer, whatever, underground, maybe electricity if they have the money. And then at that point, people can start rebuilding. Once the land is deemed clean, ready for rebuild, right? That rebuild will depend on whether your money, you got your insurance money, did that all come in? Are you then ready to build up? And that could be quick, depending on whether you can find workers. I don't know. I mean, there's labor shortage everywhere, so it's gonna be hard to find a contractor that's gonna rebuild your home in any time quick. But we will try our best to make sure that there's people that come in. We're gonna have to screen a lot of them to make sure they're reputable contractors.
Second question.
Yeah.
If you're playing with all these contractors, right, to clean up, to build prefab, does the governor's emergency declaration or proclamation bypass procurement?
So for the debris cleanup and all of that, that's by Army Corps of Engineers. So that's not the governor's decision at this point. They're going to handle all of that through whoever they contract with. It's not a state decision. But when it comes to after that, right, when people are starting to rebuild and do whatever, that's going to be a individual decision of each homeowner who they want to use as a contractor. So the state's contracting and procurement, it'll likely be for things like we want to build, I don't know if there's housing units that people want to see that would be by the state, or if it's rebuilding the school. So it's things like that that the state will actually decide on.
But the idea of putting up prefab
Yeah, yeah.
or whomever with state money and the state federal fund,
Yeah.
right? Combination. So does the state money then and the federal or federal require procurement issues or bring in procurement issues?
I'm not sure. Yeah, that's a good question. I think so. I would think that because FEMA's going to pay for some of it, they're going to require some modified version of procurement. So they're not going to let the state just pick sole source on who they like, right? Just like, oh, we like this guy, we like that guy. So because it's FEMA and because it's federal money, the feds always come with strings. So there will be some procurement. I don't know that it's going to be a full-on request for proposals. We get 60 proposals and then score all of them. Like, it's not going to be the normal procurement. But I think there's streamlined ways where what they did, especially with like ARA funds way back when under Lingo. Oh God, when was that? There was some, right? They had a streamlined procurement system. When it came to some of the coronavirus CARES money, there was a streamlined procurement system. So it's kind of procurement, but it's not the full-blown way, is what I anticipate will come.
Well, procurement can take a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's why it's going to be like a streamlined version where it's not open it up to everybody, but you kind of pick like the top like 4 or 5 and then you score them. So, yeah, Peter.
So it's the questions for both of you. Current legislator and the governor's office. We know that we are short in all of the crafts. Plumbers, electricians, carpenters. Now, before Maui.
Yeah.
Here, and right here in Oahu, we know that in some of the, actually the engineers, I should say electricians, it's been suggested we're down 25% from what we should have, the size of community. With a lot of them thinking about going to Maui to make that extra $10 an hour kind of thing, above what they might, we're going to be losing that many more here in Oahu.
Oh, yeah.
Is there any work, and this is, Gene, for you also, in this new legislative session about just creating new pipelines for training, because we haven't done a real good job in creating pipelines for any of these crafts in the last 5 years.
Let me pick that up and run with it, because if you remember, China had barefoot doctors basically find out what are the major sicknesses and teach people how to do that. They go out into the villages. Having been a Peace Corps volunteer, we did a bit of that in the jungles of Borneo. But because it's such a employee short economy, we're going to have a lot of dislocation. In fact, I've been waiting to order this gentleman's dinner. Where's the waitress? and by the way, the waitresses here are generally high school juniors and seniors at Kaiser. So this shortage phenomenon is just rampant. The other part of that is when you got political will, you can do all that stuff.
Sure.
I have been designated, well, actually I requested, when Blake said that there's various working groups within the House of Representatives for the Maui situation, I'm on the jobs and business and the jobs group. And that directly influences the jobs group. There is a better way to do the training than the traditional technical training. My company, the Hawaii Entrepreneurship Training and Development Institute, basically taught people how to do business in a 3 to 6 month period. I learned Malay language in 3 months rather than 2 or 3 years in at the university. So it's to be able to be done. And Peter, I'd like to speak to you again. You're still in Senator Wakai's office?
Left it, but yeah, I mean, but that's
because
something
that's something we can expedite. The point is, if you get political immunity, you can do these things very easily. But as I think in the wrestling with the procurement, some of these regulations and some of the things that you want to talk about the cost of living and why housing is so important or why it's so expensive is because the regulations that increases the cost of this stuff exponentially, 25-30% of everything because of the way government has the restrictions. But the point is we got to work it through. And it can be done, definitely it can be done. That's my opener on that.
Yeah, just very briefly. So yeah, I mean, we've been in discussion with a lot of the trade unions, especially because all of them are suffering from just not being able to find a good pipeline and have more people coming in through apprenticeship programs. So we're working with the high schools to try and figure out how we get more of our Hawaii students in that pipeline so they know that those are the avenues that they can start working at immediately because, I mean, pay now is pretty good. So, it's not as depressed as it used to. Yes?
One thing you haven't mentioned is a problem pre-Lahaina is the planning and permitting process. I mean, it's crazy.
It
I
is.
mean, and it can only get worse with this, or everybody else is going to get worse. Lahaina will get faster. So what discussions are going on?
We will repeat the question. What about planning and permitting?
Yeah.
It's the slowest, most burdensome thing you could imagine. Procurement is a piece of cake compared to permitting and permission. Go ahead,
I mean, so if it wasn't recorded, I could. But let me just say this, right? So I think everybody recognizes Department of Planning and Permitting is it's a morass, and a huge problem that every mayor has promised they're going to fix and just hasn't been able to. In part, that is just a good example of why the governor made his affordable housing emergency proclamation. He's like, I'm taking it out of your hands. So to the extent that anybody is eligible for an affordable housing project or housing project, because it's slightly bigger than just the word affordable, but it's not meant to be high end. But to the extent that we in the state take that off the plate of the county, we're hopeful that that will allow them to then really work on the regular permitting and planning for people that really just need the everyday to-day stuff, right? That you can sit there for 18 months, 2 years, and
Lisa was
application's still
next on the questions. Lisa?
Yes.
Wait, sorry, Edward. No, Lisa was the next person, actually. Sorry, and we'll get back to you. You're round two.
Yeah.
Question about, is there a clear, precise knowledge of who has the authority where the zone has been cleared along the town? Who's going to make that determination?
So EPA.
I'm sorry.
EPA, Environmental Protection Agency from the
So
feds.
they're going to do that because
Yes.
there are PCBs and there are 9 houses there. And this is not a matter of Army Corps coming in and bulldozing everything else and
Yeah.
2 months later construction can begin. That's not going to happen if it's done properly.
Yeah, so EPA is, who's taking care of the environmental cleanup to make sure that we don't have any harmful pollutants from the Haina still there before we just clear the land and or let people back into their property and there's still all these harmful things. So EPA is currently the organization that is going through all of the parcels to make sure that it's clean of the environmental hazards. And so we're not at this point allowing people to have access to those properties until the EPA gives their clearance.
Because it's not going to be an immediate thing. I mean, EPA is refusing to test the houses in East Palestine because they know dioxin levels are going to be so high. And this is not a matter of clear the rubbish and force it on another community on the mainland or elsewhere, and then all of a sudden we can start giving like none of it's done properly.
Yeah. So we're taking our cues from EPA. So that's a good job. But I should also say our Department of Health Environmental Division is also working with EPA.
But the Department of Health is not the final authority.
No, they're just there to help EPA when they have, they're. The thing is, right, when you get a federal agency coming in, sometimes they're not culturally sensitive. So we make sure that our state agencies are there so that they're not doing anything that's inappropriate or would offend a community. Yes, I think that's gentleman and that gentleman.
My question is our hillsides are full of trees and grass, and a lot of it's owned by the Bishop Estate State Schools or the state, and sometimes private businesses. But they've let it go for years. There's a lot of fire stuff there. Is there anything the legislature can do to make these people accountable, have fire breaks or something to manage this land where we're not in a situation like behind?
Yes, about the ledge, but
Yeah,
I'll
take that one because Kamehameha Schools is very interested in the survey that I just mentioned to you about, hey, what do you have in your neighborhood? We want to inventory it. In fact, Jillian, we're going to put out fire maps, basically, the same way that our office did a homeless map, because there were certain places you wouldn't want to take your kids because there's guys with machetes and bananas and other kinds of crazy stuff. So we will put out a map that says these are the fire hazard areas, and we're going to present them to Kamehameha Schools. I would think that they would do it on their own initiative without legislation. Legislation usually is when you can't get cooperation and you put your foot on their neck a bit and you force them to do it. I would think the responsibility, because everybody's looking through a filter now of look what happened on Maui, my God, look out my window, look at that dry grass, look at those koa trees that are crumbling in their dryness. So I would hope that this would come about naturally, but if push comes to shove, of course the legislature would come and act to do that. But at the same time, as Brett said, some of this stuff gets, or someone else said, some of this stuff already gets proposed and people sit on it. And you know the traffic light doesn't go in until somebody has an accident or somebody dies, and then the city comes in and puts in a light, or the state comes in and puts in a light. So yes, we're not doing the survey about this just for fun. We expect Kamehameha Schools, we expect results, and quite frankly, Blake, did you know that 96825 is the highest educational district in the state?
Oh.
And these guys keep my feet to the fire. The point being, If we don't do something about taking a survey and then sit on our hands, we're not doing our job. So it's going to happen whether it's legislative or whether it's coming in the schools.
But is it illegal to have a property just close to homes and just let it, you're not responsible for cleaning it up at all? So isn't that against the
Yeah, so there is a law called our nuisance abatement law. So when a property is in some form that it is actually going to be potentially harmful to neighbors or the adjacent property, then there is a law where the state can go in after providing notice to the landowner that, hey, you really need to clean this up because if you don't, it's going to be a hazard. If the landowner doesn't clean it up, then the state then has the authority to go in and do the cleanup and then bill the landowner. But it's a mechanism in the law that we just have to be more used, because I think right now it's only occasionally used and it's not used enough. Yes.
Totally switch things. What's going on with Oahu Stadium?
Oh, stadium. Okay.
Stadium.
So,
Just to change things.
yeah. So there actually was just a meeting, I want to say earlier this week, of the state agencies on the stadium, and what is going to happen. So right now there was basically $400 million that the legislature has appropriated. Not most of it is through bonds. So right, bonds are not cash. It's long-term financing over 20 to 30 years, like a mortgage, right? So even though it sounds like a lot of money, it's not. It's amortized. So 400 million is what we have. An RFP is scheduled to go out at the, I think, end of this year, so that we would have kind of 3 phases of a construction. First would be we want to demolish the existing stadium right away so that people understand this thing is a health hazard and we need to get rid of it. And, you know, we've been talking about it for years, but we've never done it. So we think like demolishing it will be a good sign. Then the next parts of the RFP will be 2 things. One is building the actual stadium. The new stadium would be maybe 25 to 30,000, so a little smaller. It wouldn't be the 50,000 that we have. It would look a little bit more like what we're envisioning is in San Diego. There's a stadium that's about 30,000. It would kind of be like that. And then as part of that property, because it's fairly large, there would be an opportunity for a developer to create an entertainment mixed-use district, which would give them the commercial incentive so that they would have more rights and potential to make money off of the entertainment district, because we want to get as much as we can out of the 400 million for the stadium. So that's kind of the way we're structuring this proposal to see, right? And what happened, right, was there were 3 people that were ready to build the stadium before the prior governor pulled the plug. In very, very informal discussions, they've indicated some interest. They can't promise that they're going to do anything because, you know, an RFP hasn't even really gone out or been written yet. So at least there's interest, and so we'll see how that goes at the end of the year.
Blake, could I follow that up? Are these going to be 15,000 or 20,000 seats or benches?
No, seats.
Are there
Yeah,
seats?
seats,
Because
yeah.
I've been getting a lot of flack from constituents saying, you're going to put me in a new stadium, you're going to put me on a bench? No
Yeah,
way
no.
am I going to renew my
Yeah.
my seasonal ticket. Okay,
Yeah, no,
that's
but
good.
we
to
want
That's
we
good to
want
hear.
it to be like a more functioning stadium. I mean, the Clarence Ching one that UH built, commend them for building it so quickly, being able so that our team can maintain their Division I status. But it's not the most comfortable stadium. And it's bench seating and it's really packed together. So. Yeah, I think
Do you have an idea how long that lease would be on the stadium? I mean, the state's not selling the land.
No.
It's leasing the land.
It would be leasing
So,
the land.
how long is that lease?
Oh, like decade, maybe like 99 years or something.
How many?
60 or 90. I forget what the maximum they can lease out for commercial purposes. There's a max under the state law how long you can lease out, and I think they go for the max, whatever that is. I can't remember what it is, but it would be decades. Yeah. Yes.
Is there maintenance for the stadium built into?
Yes.
Oh, because
So they would be
Rio has no operations and maintenance.
correct.
So
Yeah. So it's what we call a design, build, operate, and maintain RFP. So they would be in charge of the whole thing, right? Design, construction, operate, and maintain it. So they'd have to do all of that as part of the RFP. Yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah, this gentleman after. Yeah.
Okay. Gene and Blake, you both talked about the big problem of government system is very reactive.
Yes.
And that's there's been a lot of testimony from the local residents in Lahaina and all of West Maui, like to the Maui County Council that had public hearings on the disaster, and they just, there's a huge trust issue, like the trust in government at all three levels has been demolished along with their homes and all their belongings, and they are calling for accountability, and then part of that is, you know, you represent the legislative branch and also the executive branch. The executive branch, the governor already launched the investigation through the Attorney General, right, in the early days. But there's also legislators still calling for, they're still calling for a special session to do a legislature investigation because, you know, the executive branch investigation, there's some conflict of interest because it's appointed by the head of the state government. But what's the status of the investigations in the different branches of government? And then I have a follow-up on the intergovernmental.
Okay. So for our investigation, the governor asked the Attorney General to lead an investigation, but the Attorney General realized they don't have the expertise or capacity. So they have contracted that out to a firm that has done a lot of wildfire investigations. I think they did 2 in California and 1 in Oregon. So they are well equipped to figure this out in terms of coming up with the final conclusions on what they think happened and where some of the causes may have been. So we'll see where that comes out. But that's what we're waiting for on the
Are they going
executive
to
side.
investigate all three levels, county, state, and federal governments? Because they're all interlocked in roles. Because, you know, those of us who have worked in government, I've worked in federal and state, and there are tabletop annual exercises for emergency management and disaster response and prevention. Thousands of staff from all three levels of government, you know, war game, hurricanes coming through, and there's all kinds of like incident management system training from FEMA for state and county officials. There's an incident management system. There's emergency operations centers and all these things which were pre-positioned. So a lot of it, the residents are testifying that it was all such an unnecessary, preventable in so many ways, tragedy with the water, the power lines, right, the cause of the fire, the kids being sent home from school so they were at home and their parents were away at work, and then the no warning, they didn't know the fire was coming at 60 miles an hour, all these kind of things eroded, completely undermined trust. So where does that set? Is the executive branch investigating all three levels, and what will the legislature do?
It's a comprehensive review of what happened, why it happened, a timeline, what went into all of the decisions, and what were the outcomes. So if there is responsibility from the federal side or from the state side, we expect that to be pointed out. We probably do see that there's a high potential for some to be on the county, but we're gonna have to wait and see what the report comes out.
There's 4 investigations going on. You've already mentioned FEMA. They're going to be from day one doing that. And the governor, to his credit, instinctively in the first few days said, hey, AG, I want you to investigate that. I think he was prescient in doing that. And after the fact, he said, let's investigate that. Now we've got the Congress that's doing their damage assessment investigation. I just wrote to the speaker today asking him to have hearings either here or at least in Washington to make sure that the people that you're talking about who are doing the testimony before the city council either do it here before the U.S. Congress or in Washington. And lastly, as Blake mentioned, the speaker has us in all these working groups of which we're collecting data. Right now, there's not one person who knows everything that's going on. We haven't got a timeline that exactly says when the fire, when it was. We don't know who didn't call who, such and such. All we know is Zendaya said, look, we didn't do the thing because we didn't want people to run up to the mountains and run into the fire. Duh, are we stupid? Okay, that was the people getting their response immediately from the people. The guy knew he was done when he said that. The more of these 4 studies that come out, the more data is going to reveal the facts. Right now, we have some assumptions. Blake, we've got so many of these conspiracy theories that it came out of the Martians and the globalists and the other thing. Do you guys address any of that stuff, or you just let it roll?
So that's my follow-up. Is the different levels, the 3 levels of government, have been working at cross purposes from each other in a lot of ways. And let's drill down about the federal government, because it looks like we need help from the state government to protect us from corruption in the federal government. For example, the whole world, all the international news saw pictures of the FEMA agents, like up to 1,000 federal agents that swooped in, and they're living at the 5-star Grand Wailea, 4 Seasons hotels, right? They got pictures in all the world press of them drinking at the bar, working on their laptops, more than an hour one-way drive from the ground zero of Lahaina, right? So that's destroyed trust. Then what about the military? That, everybody knows that something that shouldn't be reactive because there was a precedent. It's like in the previous 2004, the tsunami in Asia, where Thailand, right, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, the U.S. military, when the tsunami happened, immediately they mobilized, aircraft carriers that could bring in the food, the water, power supply, medical, right? Medical hospital ships go all over to non-citizens, and we're paying as the taxpayers. But then when Lahaina, it wasn't just the people who lost their homes, but all the residents on the whole coast had no water, no baby formula, no medicine, no transportation, no food, no stores to get food. For days and days, the testimonies are saying that they didn't see a single official from any of the 3 levels of government show up at the pop-up relief hubs. Yeah, it's all done by grassroots citizens like Archie Kalepa, Hawaiian Homesteads, the churches. There were boats, small boats, fishermen boats coming from Molokai, Lanai, even from Oahu. I mean, there are friends in Waimanalo that was gathering. This is like survival supplies, right?
Yeah, I'm
for
sorry,
people to live.
I disagree. The 25th Infantry Division supplied 2 companies of soldiers. The Hawaii National Guard supplied 175 people within 4 days of the incident.
They didn't show up to the relief hubs. All they were doing was blocking the
all
streets.
they were doing?
They were
all
blocking,
they were doing?
Listen, just let me finish what I'm conveying. What the residents in Lahaina said, that they didn't come for the emergency survival supplies. They were there blocking people from going back to their homes, right? The National Guard and the police. But why didn't they do the same for other countries, like bring for the food, water, power, information, medical, things like that, which they have the capacity from Pearl Harbor. Within 2 hours, they have amphibious landing, helicopter airlift, but it never showed up, and all the people had to do it all by themselves at their own cost. some of them driving from Honolulu in small fishing boats, 11 hours one way through the rough channels. Why wasn't the fleet mobilized? And even Tulsi Gabbard, who's a current Army Reserve officer, she's asking the same question. She was a congresswoman for Maui.
Let me interject that. That's why these 4 studies that are ongoing
Yeah.
are going to give answers to that, not probably to the full extent that what you're saying for people who've gone through that. But these are hardships. And look,
Yeah,
if we were popular before the fire, we're certainly not going to be popular now. You know what the approval rating of the legislature is, Blake, when you and I were in, and it's still the same? 18%. So with some of these comments about if we're even going to be in double digit, we're going to be looking fine. The point is, people are disconnected to a lot of things that are happening, and there's a lot of, even though there's social media, there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation that we can say somebody can get on a blog and make up a lot of crazy things. But of course we can do better. This is the bottom line of the whole thing. We're going to learn from this. We're going to make corrections. How many people died in the fire at the Marco Polo? How many? 3. What did they do after the Marco Polo fire? Studies, legislation, and then, okay guys, we're going to put sprinklers in all the new condos. We're going to retrofit. We're going to give you benefits and tax breaks to retrofit your place with a sprinkler. That's what I think is going to come out of this. This is going to be a rebuilt Maui. It's going to be a lesson learned. Right now, there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of hardship that's going. I'm very optimistic by that. Anyways, Blake, that's my intervention.
Does Lahaina, the tragedy in Lahaina, the disaster in Lahaina, does that qualify for the rainy day fund?
So it definitely does in the governor's mind. We are figuring out how much we're going to have to tap of the rainy day fund.
Yeah, you got a couple billion in there, right?
I don't know if it's that much, but yeah, there's a healthy amount in the rainy day fund. Of course, all of that will be subject to legislative approval. To tap the rainy day fund, we need 2/3 vote, but that is our plan right now. We're going to see how much money we can cobble together from what the state currently has and hasn't spent yet in the fiscal year. We're going to wait and see how much the feds are really going to kick in, because they tell us they're going to give us a lot, but we have to kind of wait and see what they're really going to commit to. And then after that, I think next session you'll see some proposals going into the rainy day fund.
I think the state needs to get involved with that rainy day fund, because if you took $1 billion, you can use that $1 billion state money to leverage the federal money.
Yeah.
And all, maybe other donations on that.
Yeah.
Different, foundation. Best as grant as possible for low interest loans. But I think what the people, the community of Lahaina who were affected, including the Native Hawaiian community, needs to see that the state is actively now trying to plan for the
Recovery.
or the redevelopment of Lahaina. They need some kind of hope that this is going to happen. All right? Right now, there is no hope. They're saying, you know what? You guys don't care. You get too much red tape, too much political involvement. Let's go out there, like, even if it's a disaster proclamation, go hire a G70 to go over there and start talking to the people. What do they see is the group? What do they see is the plan to redo Lahaina? What do they think? Because right now, there's no hope, right? And they don't have a home anymore. They don't have access to money. They're missing people, right? So what is that? Take some of that money and give them some hope. Send somebody out and somebody talking to them. start taking names and how contact information. Does anybody have that? A whole list?
Let me give you a
Okay.
historical footnote.
I don't know that data.
We suffered the same thing in 1992 when Hurricane Iniki came in. I was one of the members on the finance committee that voted whatever came in from Kauai, we funded. Let me say as your representative, whatever comes in from Maui, we are going to fund. There is the hope. The legislature is going to back this to whatever we have in the rainy day fund, whatever it costs to rebuild Maui, it will be built. I'm probably the only one in the legislature who voted in 1992. I'm not dating myself, but I'm going to date myself. Say, the political will of the legislature is to rebuild Maui. I'll give you my word and guarantee that that's going to be the case. So when we say they're neglected, maybe there was some screw-ups in terms of the implementation, but in terms of the commitment to rebuild Maui, to do as much making them whole and complete, there's no question about it. The legislature is going to be fully behind it. No question about it. In working with the government.
And Gene, it's vital for all the islands because the UH Economic Research Organization said this will probably tip the entire Hawaii into a recession economically.
If we don't
Because it's
get
such a
Maui
big
back,
economic engine.
that's why the governor is wisely saying, look, come back to Maui, don't go to the west side, but you guys come on back in. There's like $20 million a day that the economy in Maui is losing.
You know, with all the federal, state, and county studies and independent auditors' reports, are they gonna let the public review it in its draft form and give comments and feedback, and will that be incorporated into those reports? Because we come up with a final report, it may be one-sided, it may be steered one way, and we lose the valuable input of people. So will it document it, will it incorporate it, and will it include it in the report so everybody can see? And what if we don't agree with it? What if it's one-sided?
Yeah, I'll have to find out what the actual process is. All we did, yeah, I mean, what we've done is we found a firm that's reputable and has done this before in 3 other wildfires. I don't know what that process is, but I'll take a look at it. That's all I can.
It's a federal requirement that we publish the draft so everybody can look at it and comment.
Yeah, I mean, if it's like an EIS, that's normally how it's done, but I don't know what the circumstances are for an investigation like this. I'll take a look at it. I don't know I can make anything happen, but I will take a look at it. Yeah, and I'll find out if that's the process.
Common sense, right?
Yeah.
The news is reporting that report is all voluntary, so because of the legal challenges on, to the state, the county, it probably will happen that the people that need to tell your contractor where the investigation will clam up because it's gonna come out
Yeah,
and
so
hurt them in a legal procedure.
yeah, so the reason why we want the Attorney General to actually be the lead agency is the Attorney General has the subpoena power. So the contractor will actually be able to use the Attorney General's subpoena power to compel people to testify and turn over documents.
Okay, we're going to go into the final round. Yes, madam, go ahead.
I want to know what's going on with the accuracy of the children missing.
With that, sorry,
Children
the,
missing.
Children, what's going on with the children missing? What's the action?
Still missing.
yeah, I mean, there are still people that they have not been able to identify because we don't have the DNA evidence. So,
What are you guys going to do to help get that all together?
well, I don't know how we compel people to give us DNA is the problem. So they are trying to figure out as much as they can and piece together whatever they can to identify all of the missing and whoever are unidentified. But until we have DNA evidence, the remains that we have are in such a condition that's the only way to identify people is through DNA.
Trust. If the people don't trust you, they're not going to work with you.
Well,
I know you all understand that.
okay, but again,
So when someone
if
says, like Gene, I'm sorry, when you say that there's this conspiracy, it's not conspiracy. There's people's lives that are giving testimony on how they feel and what they're going through. So when you minimize it by saying things like that, that's not a thing. The people are suffering and they're going through They're going through trauma. Don't do that. Support, encourage, help.
Thank you for your advice. Edward, you're round two.
This kind of dovetails, the conversation on DPPs came up. So my question really relates to the behavior of the DPPs, particularly our own here. The state does not need to do permitting for a DPP. What we need is a strong message from the state that that's your job. It's not your job to regulate renting. For example, we have tutus who are getting $10,000 fines because they didn't know how to make an adjustment on their Airbnb listing. Okay. Maybe that's a $200 fine, but $10,000? Just imagine if that, usually building inspector, took their time and worked on somebody's permit instead of hassling tutus. That's what I want to make.
Oh yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. That the issue is the city passed the ordinance that creates the fine level at 10,000 per violation. So
okay, federal judge has already gone through it and
yeah.
declared provisions of the ordinance invalid.
Yeah.
Now
So
we need to have the state go, hey, look, this is what Judge Watson said. Knock it off, Honolulu.
yeah. So
Or any of the other counties.
we'll wait and see what the judge says and what the court say, right? Because it's currently in litigation, right? They're challenging whatever ordinance 89 something dash something. So
Judge Watson has already spelled it out in the preliminary injunction. He's already made those declarations. He's made it clear. Yeah, there's going to be more decisions, but there is no new evidence, so those decisions won't change. You are in a position right now to send a clear message to the county for DPPs and say, this is your job. Review building permits. Do it faster. Don't be corrupt. Okay? Do it faster. Get it done so that we can invest in our properties. Leave us alone with the renting. We need that money so that we can take care of our aging. We need rental money. Children have left. There's rooms there to rent. We take that money and we use it to pay for caregivers. What happens if we're not allowed to do that? We are, as Ian Tongi puts it, priced out of paradise.
yes.
It is serious. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to wrap up. Go ahead. 2 questions and we're going to have plenty of comments.
So I'm going to be going over to Maui with a team of people this Saturday. We're doing trauma workshops with clergy and laity because there's so much mental health issues that are coming out. I understand there are 5 suicides that are related with it. You know, the amount of frustration and anxiety and domestic violence is rising. And I know that you said a lot of people are taking care of in the hotel and stuff, but so we anticipate that in 3 or 4 weeks, when they're out of the hotels, when they've overstayed their time with their relatives or whatever else, and there's no jobs, no home to go to, their frustration level will be really bad. And so we're on the ground trying to, work with the different people that are doing that. And then in terms of the EPA, when I was over there, I was with Samaritan's Church, and they have the screeners, they call them screeners, and a whole bunch of churches are training their people to know what screening is. So when EPA gives the okay to go on the land, they give them only like 1 day, right, to go look. And they need a professional screener to go through the ashes and everything else. And they don't have enough screeners. And then they spray that glue on everything, and like I said, they bulldoze the whole thing down 6 feet, and then they have to clean up the soil, so that's going to take a while. But we just know just that aspect of people's ashes, bodies all being pushed over here. There's going to be anger when the people hear that they do these parts now. Yeah. So that's why we're trying to gear up and get ready for that. So yeah, so we're just going to be concerned, and so we do feel that everybody's talking about development, land, building, everything. but there's a group of people who really need mental and a lot of help. Yeah.
Yeah.
So especially if you can't find children or your loved ones.
Yeah. So our Department of Human Services, our Department of Health with their behavioral division, and the Governor's Office of Wellness, which is about informed trauma care. So those three agencies are on the ground over in Maui, trying to make sure that we provide wraparound services for the people that. Yes. Yeah, and they're working with a lot of the social workers through the National Association of Social Workers. They also have a bunch of clinical psychologists as well as clinical social workers. So there's a team that's out there that are starting to provide some of those services to the people that are in the hotels that are housed. But we know there's still a whole lot more people that need those type of care.
I'm breaking my rule. Go ahead.
Okay, can you pass the word back to the governor, the mayor, the city council, all the bureaucrats? Never use the word conspiracy because that's a real disrespect for them. Everybody's entitled to do research and provide comment, and we don't deserve to be disrespected, whether you agree or not. Do not use the word conspiracy. That is so wrong. And I hope you pass that on to your departments and legislature because that is really insulting and it just shows that the government says, listen to what I say and that's it. You know, don't do that. We need hope, we need to come together, we need to be unified. And you're not helping if you use the word conspiracy or anything related to that.
Madam, my apologies for mentioning that word twice. And I should follow.
Oh, and I've heard
Okay.
a lot of quote conspiracy theories. They turn out to be true. So maybe we should listen to the other side.
Okay, we are going to be based upon facts. There's 4 studies coming out. It's premature, and it's hard to wrap up something as exciting as this. But Blake, we've got closing comments now. What are you going to say before I wrap things up?
No.
Here's my food.
No.
I apologize to you.
Yes, sir, her food is coming.
Yeah.
You get ordered.
Yeah. No. Thank you for this very engaging conversation. It's been, what is it? I left the legislature in 2011, so it's been a while since I've actually had to do a community meeting. So I forgot what they're like. But thank you guys for coming out. It's important. It's important to hear from people and what they really think is going on, right? Especially for me in the governor's office, you get caught in a bubble. You get caught in your own world of, I'm dealing with trying to find housing, and that's all I've been doing for the last 2 weeks, right? Housing for displaced residents. So it's good. It's good to hear other voices and other perspectives.
These are the times that tries men's souls. I think Shakespeare said that. The point is, this is a test of leadership. It's a test of humility between different ideas and parties. But it's one that we will get through. So don't let this negativity or some of the data that comes through that looks like, oh, we're going to hell in a handbasket. No, it's going to work out. It's going to be there. And I want to thank the governor's office. I want to thank Blake for doing what he's doing, opening himself, making himself available. Is there any questions he didn't answer? I don't think so. So let's give a round of applause. Blake will do it. Good job. Good job, Blake. And thank you guys for coming. I want to end with one pitch. We're going to have the Minority Caucus come out. Julian, you want to make the announcement? We have a listening tour. September 21. Where is it going to be? Coco Elementary. All you ever wanted to know about what's legislative coming up and what your solutions to various problems are. Thank you. Good night and aloha.
Nice talking with you, Peter. Yes, sounds like you planned it nicely on your return to Hawaii. Good for you.
Okay.
Come back in
Got a
less
little
than a
goofy
decade.
at the end, but we're fine up until the last.
Because that's the underneath.
Yeah. Hi, Sarah.
No, what you're looking at is see, the information is very vague. What people know what happened last time. We got wait for this stuff.
Thank you. I know it was a softball one, but it was
Well, now go ask him the hard one.
yeah, it was the right one. Yeah.
No,
I think she misunderstood. She misunderstood what you meant.
Oh,
Thank you for coming out.
yeah.
Hey, but I gave you a softball one.
Yes, thank you. That was very good. That was very good.
Give me a chance to kind of wow. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good, I know that. I did not know that. Yeah.
Very good. Thanks for coming out. It is